Hello everybody, and it's time for part 2 of my massive Attack on Titan review. Go watch part 1 because I'm writing this as if it's the same video, so it'll probably be in your best interest to go watch it. So go do that. And now that you're either back or still watching, let's start this video. I believe that Season 2 is a massive step up from Season 1. I think that every season of the show gets better and better and better. So that means that while this is better than Season 1, it's not as good as Season 3 or 4, but that doesn't mean Season 2 is bad at all, and that'll be reflective of my scores for the episodes. Speaking of the episodes, the amount of episodes compared to Season 1, 2, and 3 are really short. Season 1 has 25 episodes, Season 3 has 22 episodes, and Season 4 has 28 episodes. And then 2 1-hour-long specials on top of that. So that's probably why this is the shortest out of all the reviews. But just because this season is short does not mean that is bad, because the season is really, really, really good, even if it's not as long as I wish it was. This season is probably the biggest continuation of last season. What I mean by that is this season feels like the most directly after out of all the seasons, because seasons 3 and 4 feel like they are continuations, but they have their own vibe and they're usually about different things. But that is not a bad thing that this is a more direct continuation, because it feels like it is an actual natural progression from Season 1. But with all that said, let's start out with Episode 1, Beast Titan. And finally, they stopped using that stupid naming convention they did last season. This episode starts out with the aftermath of the finale of Season 1, with the wreckage it caused and the reveal of the Titans in the walls. It immediately makes Hanji a better character, and it is clear from the start of the episode. So there's that to start out with. And it does this like reverse effect that I like it. It's visually cool. And immediately there's a conversation between Connie and Sasha, two characters that get made way better by the season with putting them both into situations that flesh out their characters, but picks up with them inside this little house that is being guarded by like these scouts. And there's some other people there. The only two that we are already acquainted with are Reiner and Bertolt, who get a lot added to their character. And there are other people here too, two of which we will get acquainted with throughout this season. But they were forced to flee not long after we are introduced to them. And the reason they have to flee is because there's Titans that are coming after them. And then this dude decides to defend himself from the Titans. Sasha and Connie's villages aren't too far from where they are right now, so they decided they're going to flee there. And this is the first example of how fast-paced the season is, most likely because of the super short amount of episodes, because all of that happened in a total of 14 minutes. And the pacing remains like that for the rest of the season. There's a nice flashback with Eren that transitions to him waking up from what happened last season. Like I said, this feels like the most directly after out of any season, because the characters look the same. Unlike other seasons where the characters look very different. Mostly because there's like no time jump in this season. But in terms of what's happening, we were introduced to the Beast Titan, who is the scariest Titan in the whole show in my opinion. And his opening establishes that very, very well with him controlling the Titan and his sheer size. And this also shows just how incompassionate he is with him taking the ODM gear from this guy and then letting him be ripped apart by the Titan. Plus the whole like talking thing. But the scene of this dude being ripped apart is really hard to watch, to say the least. But in my opinion, the best part about the Beast Titan is when we actually get to know who's controlling him. But that's not for a pretty long time. I don't even think that happens within this season. And that's the end of the first episode. I think this is a really, really good episode, but not the greatest season opener. It has no Armin, and Eren and Mikasa are barely in the episode, so overall this episode gets an 8 out of 10 from me. Like I said, a good episode, just not a good first episode. Next up is Season 2, Episode 2, I'm Home. And the first third of the episode shows what Eren, Mikasa, and Armin have been doing since they were barely in the last episode, so it's nice to get a little bit more of them, even if they don't really do too much in it. Because after 7 or so minutes, we go back to what I was talking about last episode. And you guys remember how in Season 1 I said that every character has an episode where they become interesting. Well, this is that episode for Sasha. You learn that she used to be kind of a moron who's quite inconsiderate with this flashback where she talks down upon people who lost their home to the Titans and people in it. And it adds to her character because you know that she is not like that now in the present, which is a pretty good moment that builds character for her. This moment also is pretty good because it showed that she has changed, because she's talking about how people whose home destroyed by the Titans deserved it, but now she seems to have empathy and obligation to help them, which is most likely because she joined the Scouts and met people who were hurt by the Titans destroying their home. And then it has a cliffhanger for the next episode starting. I'm going to give this episode a 9 out of 10 because it helps out Sasha's character a lot, and she ends up being one of my favorite characters later on, so that's pretty cool. But it is also hard to say my favorite character later on, because by Season 4, every single character are my favorite characters, just because of how strong the characters are in the show. But next episode is titled Southwestward. And this episode is what last episode was to Sasha to Connie, but it doesn't once the opening scene. And it is amazing. Connie finds his house crushed and destroyed, knowing that all of his friends and family are probably dead. And this is an amazing moment. And after that, he just has to proceed with what they are doing at the moment. I love this scene so much. It's one of the most powerful scenes up to this point in the show. But after the opening, we see Ymir and Krista, who are two characters that I think are just okay. Krista is kind of in the background after like halfway through season 3, and I don't really like Ymir. She feels like a slightly more compassionate Annie, so she's just kind of a jerk the whole show. And just like Krista, she isn't in the show much after this. But unlike Krista, she's not important to the show at all. She does barely anything to the show as a whole, so her character in general just kind of sucks. It was pretty nice to see Hannes, though, even if it was just for a bit. It was cool seeing how he has changed, and now he seems to be more noble, so that was cool. There's more stuff with Eren, Mikasa, Armin, Levi, and Hanji, and it shows that Hanji isn't a bad character anymore, because they toned it down with like the over-exaggerated curiousness thing to where now she's more like Armin, she's just smart. Definitely better than how she was in season 1. There's also another mention of the cellar. It's probably just to remind the audience that the cellar exists. Levi showing the religious God what people like him really want, I think, is a moment that is really good, because it kind of applies to the real world. Because, not to get too political here, there are some people who have taken religion way too far, and if they got what they wanted, the world would be awful. And that's represented by this guy, so that was a great moment. This is also the start to a thing that'll be a plot point for a while with everyone in the castle. Also, Reiner and Ymir revealing to each other that they are from Marley was really, really good. You don't really know what they're talking about on a first watch, but on rewatch, this is a really good moment because you actually know what is indicated. Also, I like the Beast Titan one of the future seasons, but I do still really like him in this season, because he's like Mr. X from Resident Evil 2 in this season, and what I mean by that is he doesn't really have much of a character, but he's just scary and imposing. Also, the stuff with Eren is really, really good, and it shows that the show's not even really about Eren anymore, which I'm fine with, because that shows that they aren't afraid to go and do other stuff. Overall, this is an extremely good episode, so I'll give it a 9 out of 10. Season 2 episode 4, titled Soldier, is a bottle episode. And there are two ways a bottle episode can be. They can either be like the ones from Walking Dead, where they are really boring and not much happens, or they can be like Fly from Breaking Bad, where the episode is really, really good, a lot happens, and it's entertaining. And I'd say this episode is more like Fly. This episode takes place entirely in this castle. The starting scene of Connie is really good, until Ymir just ruins it. I really hate this moment because Ymir is just acting like a jerk, and it's not like the table seat in season 4. It's more just like a school bully where she's just mean to be mean. But that's just one moment. I like almost everything else in this episode. The scene of Reiner and Ymir is really good, not because of Ymir, because of Reiner. This is just further proof that Reiner is a really, really good character, and he's made it a lot better in an episode that's coming up real soon, but I'll talk about that when it happens. Also, the scene where he thinks that he's about to die is amazing, and a flashback with him and Bertolt's friend being killed is good, and will come up later pretty nicely. Connie saving Reiner, and then Bertolt saving everybody else is also really, really good. There's a bit of character building in the scene, which is always appreciated. Also, when the scouts protecting them died, it made everything pretty hopeless until the cliffhanger with Ymir. And I think that Ymir shifting into a Titan is just an okay moment. I just don't care about Ymir, so it really didn't impact me. But this episode is still overall amazing, so I'll give this a 9 out of 10, because everything that didn't have Ymir in it was great, and some of the best stuff in the season. But I'll also mention I weirdly like the credits in this, because it's just somber but hopeful song, and I think that works really, really well with some of the episodes. But with all that said, let's move on to the next episode, which is titled Historia. The first part of this episode is spent on a flashback of when they were all in training a long, long time ago. This flashback shows why Krista and Ymir are so close, and I've come up with something new to call Ymir, and that is that she seems like a far-right neo-Nazi who claims that she's escaped the Matrix and hates everybody for no reason. So pretty much just Andrew Tate, but less misogynistic and a bit less of a Nazi. The only good part of this flashback is the reveal that Krista is running away from her family lineage. I don't really like the flashback overall, and it really didn't do much for Ymir, Krista's character. It also really just further cemented that Ymir's character is just not good. But the episode gets better when it goes back to modern day, and it shows that Ymir killed one of Bertolt and Reiner's friends. And I also kind of wish that she died here, because it's better than the off-screen death she gets. And the Jaw Titan really doesn't do much in future, so she's probably the second weakest Titan shifter. And the only reason that it's second is that because the first is the Cart Titan, and the Cart Titan's not even meant for combat. So she could have died here, and the show would be no different. The Scouts reuniting was really, really good, though. My only problem with this is, where's John? He hasn't been here in the season at all up to this point. And then the episode ends with the reveal of Krista's real name, which is Historia. I didn't really like this episode, in all honesty. I really don't care for Historia or Ymir, so it kind of just fell flat for me. But there were some good moments, so I'll give this episode a 5 out of 10. Now it's time for Warrior, and we are already right in the middle of the season. You guys can probably tell that I like episodes where they showcase the aftermath of something big that has happened, and the starting of this episode is just like And while it's not as good as the previous ones, it's still good. And Eren reuniting with Hannes is really... Also, the setting of this section is really cool. I just like the whole aesthetic with it being dark and rainy at top of the wall. But it's around halfway the episode where it gets a lot better. And there are some hints at what's going to happen before it does, with Bertolt and Reiner talking about how they're going home and that they're almost done with something. And you really don't understand what they're talking about at this moment. But it all starts to make sense when Reiner calls Eren over to talk to him and Bertolt, and he reveals that he's the Armor Titan and Bertolt is the Colossal Titan. And they were sent to kill everyone inside the walls for reasons that you don't understand until season 4. You also are hinted at the existence of Marley, which also you don't see until season 4. This plot twist is amazing, and it is also made better by revealing that everybody sort of knew this all along, they just didn't want to believe it, and everybody reacting to it was amazing. Eren's was by far the best. Reiner's speech before this was also really good because he has formed a connection with everybody, but he knew that this was coming, and when they actually transformed, it was just done so perfectly. And there was just so much emotion behind the scene, plus Eren remembering the things that he said and did before transforming, and then it ends. Oh, I can't see myself not giving this episode a 10 out of 10. It's just so good. But now we move on to the next episode, Close Combat, and right off the bat, this episode is great with a flashback of a scene of the third episode of the show where Eren talks about his goals with Bertolt and Reiner, and this scene is just made so much better by knowing what they were hiding, and mixed in with the music, the scene is just amazing. Then we cut back to modern day, and it keeps its quality with Mikasa contemplating why she didn't kill Bertolt and Reiner. It's most likely because she didn't really want them dead. And then there is them trying to get Ymir from the Colossal Titan's grasp, and this is pretty good. But the really great part of this episode is Eren fighting Reiner, and his inner monologue in the scene was just nothing but perfection. And it just shows how much his perspective changes from now till season 4, because he's talking about how what Reiner and Barrett did, causing all those people to die, it's one of the most evil acts in mankind. But then you look at the rumbling, and that just showcases how much he changes throughout the show. Back to this episode. The flashbacks were decent. And you guys remember in season 1 when I said that if a fight scene is emotional, then it excuses any visual flaw? This is a perfect example of that. Visually, it's just mediocre, but the emotions behind it are great. And then the ending was also great, because it showcased how Bertolt and Reiner are so connected and are able to work amazingly as a team. Both characters are amazing, and this episode showcases that really, really well. Plus, the Eren and Reiner fight. I'm going to have to give this episode another 10. Now let's talk about season 2, episode 8, The Hunters. It starts out with us seeing John for the first time this season, which I'm pretty happy about, because he wasn't in much of this season so far, and he was my favorite character last season, so it's nice to see him again. And I'm happy Hannes is being shown more, because you know he doesn't exactly have a lot of time left in this show, so fleshing him out a bit before that happens is nice, and that moment. I didn't really understand the point of the flashback, though. It really does nothing for this episode, so I don't exactly see the point of showing us this. Then Armin explains to Mikasa that Bertolt and Reiner took off with Ymir and Eren, and overall the scene is really good with Armin and Mikasa. Because the show has made it obvious that they're friends, but they have never really had a full-on conversation without Eren around, so it was nice to see that. Then there's a scene of Hannes reflecting on how things used to be with them, and again, this is a really nice scene, and it's really nice to see Hannes more, because he is a really nice and interesting character, plus it's cool to see how much he's changed since season 1. And him being pretty sentimental towards Eren is a good scene, and them talking about what they plan on saying and doing to Reiner and Bertolt. This is just a really, really good scene, and then it ends with them going to get Eren and Ymir back. This episode is pretty good, and I thought that was pretty cool to see how everybody was in the aftermath of last episode. So I'll give this an 8 out of 10. The next episode is titled Opening, and it revolves around Bertolt, Reiner, Eren, and it did more for Reiner and Bertolt's character, and it was pretty weird that Ymir seemed confused to why they wanted to take Eren and her back to their hometown, aka Marley, when early in the season Ymir revealed to Reiner that she was from Marley, therefore she should know why they want to bring them. So I really didn't understand that part of the episode, but the best part of the episode is revealing that Reiner seems to have been a soldier so long that he kind of created this new personality where he actually thinks he is a genuine soldier. Kind of like how Darth Vader completely ignores that he is Anakin and kind of tricked himself into thinking that he's not Anakin. That's kind of how Reiner is, but where he has tricked himself that he's not the Armor Titan. But unlike Darth Vader, he kind of switches from being a Titan that's devoted to Marley to a soldier devoted to protecting his friends really quickly, and it's really interesting and cool to watch. But Ymir did kind of suck in this episode. I'm annoyed by our character in general, and the ending was not bad. But overall, I really didn't enjoy this episode too much. It did have some redeeming quality, settled with a 6. It was just a massive downgrade from the last few episodes. So I think that is 6 out of 5 score for it. Now let's get to the 10th episode of the season, titled Children. EDP would love that title. And it starts out with some scouts at Connie's old village, and the scouts are saying that this Titan that smashed into his house bears a striking resemblance to his mom. And this never really comes up again, so I don't get the point of it. But then it picks up where the last episode ended, with Bertolt and Reining seeing some flares, so that they now know that the scouts are coming out. The one scene of Ymir I actually like is this interaction between her and Bertolt. It's nice to see her be nice to someone for once, and it also built some character for Bertolt. And you learn that he's still really the same character that you've been seeing throughout the whole show, just you have more knowledge on him now, because he has the same personality. So that's a pretty good moment. Still not enough to save Ymir's character for me. It's a good moment nonetheless. And I say that because when she is screaming at Reiner to let her down to save Historia, I really didn't care, because she treated Historia terribly throughout the season. And there is Ymir's backstory, and I also really don't think this did anything for a character. I don't care if her cult betrayed her, so it didn't really do much for me. But it was cool to see this little realm for this first time, because it's really visually appealing, and again, later on in the show, there's some really good emotional moments that happen here. But this is not one of them. It was nice to see the scouts again. The characters we already know, especially because you can tell that they really want to get Eren, and it makes you realize just how important he is to these people. And seeing John again is nice. If I had to say something that season 1 did better than season 2, I would say that John's character, because he's kind of sidelined this season, as opposed to last season where he was one of the main characters. Overall, I really enjoyed the stuff with the scouts and not with Ymir. So I'd say those two kind of balanced out and gave a 5 out of 10. But now it's already time for the penultimate episode, titled Charge. The episode started out with a scene I really did not care for, because it's a scene between Ymir and Historia, and I couldn't care less about these characters. One doesn't matter after this season, and the other one is just a puppet for the first half of the next season. So this moment really didn't do anything for me, or the episode. But the episode immediately gets better when the scouts show up, and the scene of them talking to Reiner and Bertolt about the past is amazing. And you really get the feeling that Reiner and Bertolt never wanted it to be like this. It's just so good. And Bertolt's response to this just reinforced what I said, and Erwin's plan coming together was also really good. His character is just overall really good. And be prepared to hear more about how good his character is next season. And when he charges in this episode, it is really, really good. Be prepared to hear about that next season too. Him getting his arm bitten off is also, I know this, I keep saying something is really good, but him getting his arm bitten off is really good. And the ending with Erwin reuniting with the Smiling Titan is great. So this episode was pretty good, so I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Now it's time for the finale of Season 2, titled Scream. The beginning with Hannes being killed by the Titan that he was too afraid to kill in Season 1 is great, because it showed that he came full circle, because he died doing what he couldn't do in Season 1. But it was also really, really sad to see him go, because he was an extremely good character, but it was also really nice to see he came full circle. I also like Eren's reaction with this weird laughing and crying thing that he also does when Sasha dies in Season 4. My theory for the situation in Season 4 and right now is because he's laughing at himself. In this season, he's laughing at himself because he believed that he could actually make a difference, even though he hasn't made a difference all season. And after a really, really good and heartfelt chat with Mikasa, he unlocks this new ability to control Titans. I believe that he was able to do this because he is destined to become the founding Titan, who can do way more than just this, as we've seen in Season 4. After that, there's a scene of everybody getting out about, and I think that scene is just amazing. And then there's a scene where Eren remembers the thing that Hannes has done in the past, and yeah, that's also just amazing. I really like the scene of the Titan shifters on top of the wall, and Eren explaining what happened afterwards is good as hell. And the scene of Erwin was also great. And Eren's final chat with everybody was, again, great. Then seeing Zeke for the first time on top of that, I think that this episode is a 10 out of 10, an amazing conclusion that sets up future seasons really, really well, and that's the ending of this fantastic season of television. I think that overall this season is great, and while it is like Season 1 with the character motivations, it is also very, very different with a lot of other things. For example, Eren is not really in the season much, and while he still had a major role, he did not really feel like the main character as much as before, because it really, really didn't revolve around him. Also, how this season furthered the characters was amazing. Overall, this is a great season of television, and it's crazy how it gets better from here. Now I'm going to do some things that I did for season 1. I'm going to go through some things just to see how they changed. My 5 favorite characters this season were Reiner, Bertolt, Connie, Sasha, and Hannes, which is very different from my top 5 in season 1. There's pretty much no characters that are in both of the top 5. So in total, I rated 2 episodes of 5 out of 10, 1 episode of 6 out of 10, 4 episodes of 8 out of 10, 2 episodes of 9 out of 10, and 3 episodes of 10 out of 10. All that adds up to a 96, and divided by 12, which is the amount of episodes, that equates to 8.72. Rounded up makes my average score a 9 out of 10, and I'd say that that's what I'd give this season as a whole. My favorite episode is episode 6, titled Warrior, and my least favorite episode is episode 10, titled Children. And that's a wrap. See you guys next time, where we'll be talking about season 3. Goodbye.